Hey there, everyone. Excuse my voice to start today's Mogul Live. Really excited to bring you Ivo Raza today. He's our director guest. Really excited to talk to him. Reboot camp for anyone that's been watching our Mogul Lives lately. We had David Lipper only a couple of days ago. We're going to be featuring more of the cast and crew leading up to Mogul's collaboration for the big NFT event coming up. But really excited to talk to him today. Also another film, Jarring, that he did. For anyone that's going to join in, your chance to talk to us a little bit about your favorite scenes in the movie. Any advice that Raza can give us, we'd love to hear from it as well. But I can see he's just joined in the chat, which is great. So I'm just going to throw you guys just some really quick reminders just of what Ivo's got. Actually, this is a good photo here. This is this is David Koechner on Reboot camp. I think that's David Lipper next to him. And I think that's Jarul on the right side. We can actually ask Ivo about that. But of course, Packer from The Office, one of the stars of the film. What else have we got here? Let's have a quick look. Actually, we want to talk to you about this. I can see Ivo just about to connect with you now. Want to ask you about your cinematographer, because we spoke yesterday and David mentioned obviously what a great cinematographer it was working on Reboot camp, but just to get a director's perspective of the cinematography that they chose and why they did that as well. And then of course another film that you may have seen, if I can sort of pull this up if I can, otherwise here we go, Jarring, which written and directed by Ivo as well. So Ivo Raza is our guest here today, Reboot camp director, Jarring, another film that he directed and wrote. So really excited to have a chat with him about that. But your chance as well, you can ask anything you like, and we'll also talk about Mogul's upcoming NFT event. So let's go with the technical side. Let's see if we can get Ivo into the chat relatively easy this time around. Let's see how we go here. Let's have a look. Again, great to see Mike, David, 336 people coming in already. Great to see the chat filling up. Ivo, great to see you.
Hey, how you doing, James?
Really well, thanks. I hope I got that introduction right with some of those cast and titles as well.
Yep, it was great.
Where have we got you coming live from at the moment?
I am presently in Fort Lauderdale.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And can we ask what's taking up your time at the moment? Like what project is what you're working on?
Well, the last 10 days or so, we've been prepping for the NFT launch. So that's kept us busy, which is super exciting because it's new space and we love exploring new space and new platforms. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a bit. And then we are working on the Reboot series. So we're David and I are working on developing a series from the Reboot camp film, and then as well as that on a sequel. So kind of what happens after Reboot. And we're thinking of setting this in the NFT space because we're so fascinated by it. We figured, it lends itself to a really, really fun story. So it's been busy. Yeah. And besides that, I work on commercial productions and things like that. So I am off on set when that happens as a freelance filmmaker. And I edit as well certain projects as a freelance editor. So it's been busy. I can't complain.
Great to hear. And I mean, we're really excited at Mogul to be partnering with you guys too. A quote from David last week was when I asked him about David Lipper, when I asked him about Reboot camp, his quote was, "It didn't get much better than that." His experience working on the film. How did you kind of come along to start writing it, and what was the motivation, and what was the very first tipping point to kind of go ahead with it?
Yeah. Yes, I totally second that. Dave and I have been friends for many years, and we've did projects together in the past and always stayed in touch and saw each other and spoke. And so then when I finished this screenplay, I immediately thought of him as kind of he embodies that, you know, really wonderful space as an actor that can deliver both comedy
We'll get you back.
as well as
Gotcha.
dramatic, you know. So yeah. Did I cut out?
Only for about 3
Oh,
seconds. We can,
perfect.
yeah,
So
it all
anyway,
makes sense.
so yeah, so the genesis of the story is that you know, I've always been very fascinated by cults and these kind of secret societies, and especially the leaders who command this apparent absolute control over the members. That has always fascinated me because I find it so bizarre, you know. As artists, you know, we're free thinkers, and nobody's going to tell me crap, you know. But it fascinated me. So I delved into it deeply. I mean, I researched, read, watched any documentary that's out there, read, you know, anything I could find, and it emerged this kind of playbook that is completely just one, and anyone can literally follow. I mean, obviously you got to have the, you know, the charisma and personality to go with it, but you know, it's and that was the structure for Reboot Camp. It's kind of like, okay, you start with this love bombing and you seduce people. You'd never invite anybody into a cult. You invite them to join an environmental group or whatever BS, because nobody is willingly going to join a cult. Then you tell them, well, I am the all-knowing, so don't listen to what anybody else is saying. Then you start cutting people off from their families. Then you start collecting money. I mean, it's a playbook, literally. It's like 12 steps of manipulation.
And what was your kind of like when you started to research, obviously, you know, writing Reboot Camp, and then you kind of came across all these different cults and, like you said, the playbook. Now, how do you view the whole setup of a cult? Do you kind of like look at it as like, this is even worse than before? This has given me more ideas for another sequel. Where's your head at the moment?
You know, looking at it from the outside, which I'm still on the outside, but with much more insight, let's say, it's so much easier to judge, like, it wouldn't happen to me. And then once you start realizing that people fall for this when they're in trouble and they're in kind of in between moments in life, you know, everybody needs some sort of support system and a place to belong. And this is the moment where these predators, because that's truly what it is, kind of pounce, you know. And it's given me a really, you know, the thing is, I'm into like satire and comedy. So once you go really deep into like the cult stuff, it's too serious to make light of.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's one of those things. I mean, it's like the Holocaust. You can't make comedies about the Holocaust. There's nothing funny.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and so
I think that's what you got really right. And it's, I mean, as a script structure, the 3 acts in Reboot Camp is really well done, because you don't kind of go too far in one direction where it comes into kind of like a drama and people kind of get down and depressed. But at the same time, you're kind of, you're keeping to a true story. Like you said, with David's character, it's believable how easily he can fall into that. And the comedy really comes out beautifully.
yeah, thank you. No, yeah. I mean, listen, it was funny. After a few days of this, several people, especially extras, were like, you know, because they didn't know all the intimate details. Like, oh my God, this makes sense what he's saying, you know. And we're coming up with this crazy stuff just to make it as absurd as possible. And so, you know, it's fascinating. It's really fascinating. So you know, the subtext kind of is like, you know, the critical thinking in society, like, where has it gone? Because we've seen a lot of interesting stuff happening over the last few years with all kinds of crazy stuff. And so that you know, that has really connected me much more to the material. So that's why, and we love the characters. They're wonderful characters. You know, the brothers Seymour and Danny, and Cooper, the Eddie McClintock character, and I mean, really everybody else. I mean, it was a dream project. Truly, what David said was true. It was just such a pleasure. Everybody was so on it and professional, and you never get that, or rarely, and so we cherish that, both of us. And so we want to use these characters and extend this story into something else, and see the evolution of them, because they're worthy. It's
a great film, and I think the audience knows that. I mean,
thank you.
Speaking with the people I know, and definitely Mogul. I mean, we love the film, and and I think we spoke about this once before.
Yeah,
it's hard to do good comedies, comedies that land, or comedies that people today. Can you talk about the writing process with Reboot Camp? Because director and writer of it as well. How long did the writing process take, and how many drafts was there?
So there were about probably 17 complete drafts. And so the process took about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, but that includes all the research, all the reading and stuff. So not actively writing. And what was the toughest was to write in a documentary format, because I've written a bunch of scripts before, and you kind of are in the groove of that. This is different, because the structure, like, you have to tell the story of the documentary, but you have to tell the story of the story. And so you have this kind of layering, and one thing affects the other so much that it wasn't easy. It was like my brain was, like smoke coming out of my ears for weeks. And I laid it out with index cards and shuffled stuff around. It was a lot of work. And then on top of it, we had this, David and I always said, it's a relatively short script. It was, I think, about 90 pages tops in the end. We want to leave some space to just riff on stuff, because we both love improv. And so, so every scene we're like, okay, let's shoot the scripted materials, and then let's just kind of riff on exercises. And then on top of it, we got this amazing additional group of people to come in, like Jarul and David Koechner, who we knew would show up literally 48 hours before. So there's no rewriting. We're in the middle of shooting. So it's like, okay, we'll give them some exercises to do, and it's going to be total improv with them within the context of the story, right? But then once you finish shooting that, you have this, okay, it's scripted, we can get this done, but I have this amazing material that was done, that a lot of it is related to the story, a lot of it made it into the film, and some of it was somewhat not related.
Well, that's what I heard. There's just so much on the cutting room floor that is just gold.
Well, and that's why this NFT situation is so wonderful, because we get to share some of that unused stuff, which was fantastic, but just didn't connect to the story properly. You can't, I love David Koechner. He's freaking the most hilarious man alive, but I can't, like, gotta kill your darlings, right? And so you have to leave some of that stuff out. So the fact that we get to use that with this launch is like dream come true for me, because we get to share some of the additional fun bits, And then the last rewrite actually happened in the edit, because, you assemble and then you go like, hey, but I have all of this other stuff. So how can I use that? And that was a tremendous experience. I edited it too. And so it was amazing. It took months and many drafts. So if you count those in, there were probably like 25 rewrites,
That's fantastic. Yeah. For anyone that's just joined us, we've got Ivo, who's the director of Reboot Camp. All this week, we're talking with the cast, or let's just say some great people from Reboot Camp. And again, you can ask any questions to Ivo as well about his career, Reboot Camp. But for anyone that's just joined us, just making that mention, Mogul partnering with Reboot Camp, NFT event coming up this month. Plus, we have the Cine Lounge VIP premiere as well, which people can get involved in. So some really exciting stuff coming in. Just on that whole point where you made, Jarul, you mentioned David Koechner. Can you walk us through the casting process? Is there any interesting stories when you were casting Reboot Camp?
A couple of crazy stories that are not well known, but really fun and kind of sad in a way.
Whatever you can share with us would be great.
No, we can share. It's all respectful, but funny. I lived with David for the entire production. We were there for months together, hashing things out and meeting and doing everything. And in the end, we decided, we can cast this without a casting director, because we started meeting people, and whoever we shared the screenplay with was like, yeah, this is fun. I want to be part of this, especially because it was written in such a way that we can give people like, look, we can use you for 2 days and that's it. And so it makes it really easy for anybody who's even on a serial or another movie to just like, I'll come by, because it's fun material and it's not a huge time commitment. So that's what happened, And then David, he has an amazing history in Hollywood, so he has tons of contacts. I had some of our other producers had some, so it all came together. Jim, who was the producer on MTV Real World for 18 seasons, so he brought that whole group with him, and it was wonderful, and it just kind of started coming together organically, which was fantastic. And then as we're dealing with this, we one of the Cooper character was, we were talking to a really well-known player, let me not use names here, who had an insane agent out of Europe. And he would call us and just berate us over all kinds of things that we never mentioned. And poor guy, within this process, after 5 days of total insanity with this man, he died because he I think had a massive
the agent died?
Yes. And so stuff like this happens, and you're just kind of like, oh my God, this is like just craziness, And then things like Jarul and David Koechner showing up without us really knowing, because they couldn't confirm in advance. Then when we met with Eric Roberts and his wife Eliza also, and they're like, yeah, no, he's flying to Toronto to shoot a TV series during our shoot days. And so we spoke with the location guy. Say, hey, could we get the location for like 6 hours on this day, the day they're departing in the morning? And so this was the scene where we shot the toilets, with Eric and his wife, and they were wonderful, having a blast. And, but the same location is used for weddings. So, we're still shooting, and there's this wedding party starting to come in on the other side of the compound, and so now we're all disassembling toilets and carrying, it was fun, man. It was just crazy fun.
How many hours did you get with Eric Roberts between when he was on set and then had to get to the airport?
Oh, probably 6 hours. That's it.
Which I think is amazing. You guys can operate with that sort of like, I guess you could say, timeline.
That was by design. That was by design. The way the script was written was to allow for this kind of completely documentary style production. And you mentioned our director of photography, Derek Cohen, amazing guy. He did a wonderful job. But he came more from a traditional standpoint. So when we started shooting the first scene, it's like, okay, I'm going to light here, and then we'll relight and reverse. I'm like, no, that's not how it works, dude. This is docu-style. Lights go up in the ceiling, and we're moving 360 degrees. And so the first couple of hours was like very, let's figure each other out. Of course, we had discussed all of this and met and pre-visualized and did all of that before. But, once you're on set and you start working on that, that's when everything becomes real. And then very quickly picked up right away, and it was like a ballet, man. We were just flying around and capturing stuff, 2 cameras at all times, so that we have good coverage for editing, and moved fast. We moved fast. I mean, it was really
well. I put that photo up just briefly when I was introducing you, and it had Derek with the red, and it wasn't on like a tripod or anything. It literally, he's holding it. I think it's on his shoulder maybe, but it's kind of like that whole, like when you said you're shooting in such a style where you're not setting the shots up and kind of lighting it and having it very kind of like structured. you're
Yeah.
kind of like bang, 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 kind of following the characters round. I'd love to hear your take, just quickly one step back, just on the casting.
Sure.
Ed Begley Jr., getting him involved in the production. I mean, he's a really funny guy, and his body of work as well is great to have anywhere.
He's a legendary actor at this point, and especially in the mockumentary world, he's been involved in a lot of the Christopher Guest mockumentaries, and a bunch of other stuff. And he has this deadpan, very stoic demeanor, and it's wonderful. And he doesn't try hard, and that's what makes it so amazing. And then his lovely wife Rochelle was on there, who is in the film as well. So we got this genuine dynamic of this married couple who've been together for a while, and it really worked really well. There's tons of unused stuff of the two of them as well. We did a bunch of couples therapy with them. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll circle back to just David Koechner, which I put in the assets as well just earlier
Yes.
on. For anyone that's there's more and more people coming into the chat. Ivo, really lucky the pleasure really to be talking to him about Reboot Camp. So guys, you can ask any questions as well into the chat at any stage you like. Just having someone like that, I mean, I kind of recognize him straight as Packer from The Office straight away, or Anchorman.
Yeah.
What was, when you kind of cast him, what were you looking for him to bring into the film? Were you wanting him to play that character? Were you wanting him to kind of, bring the comedy up? Like, how did you discuss the role with him?
Well, the thing is, we didn't know we would have him until the last moment. So he was not scripted into the story at all. So when he arrived, we had a room for him and Jarul to share. And so when David went up to talk to them, and then he came back and said, look, these two guys are really kind of hitting it off, and they're funny, and maybe we should do like a buddy, like a buddy's therapy. And so we did, and that's all it was. And so when I spoke to them, it was, just go over like what the whole concept is, what we're going to do, and to bring their improv skills. And I think with David Koechner, who is such a he brings so much experience with comedy. But Jarul, man, he totally nailed it. I mean, he didn't miss a beat. He started singing. It was just wonderful, and the two of them, just the chemistry was so fantastic.
As a director, how did you direct Jarul as opposed to David, or did you kind of give them both the same kind of wavelength or leeway?
It's what's wonderful when you work with this level of talent is there's not that much directing. It's more a collaboration of how do we get where we need to get versus telling anybody what to do, and which is a wonderful thing, because it becomes a build versus a struggle to, oh man, I really need this, emotion here. And so you really focus on activities and what they're discussing. And so you cover that up front, like, hey, here's a fun bit we could talk about. And then you let it go, because they'll come up and have some genuine responses, much better than if you thought about it in the moment. Obviously, if you have time, then you can script it and figure it out. But so it was very unique, and I personally really enjoy working in that way, and I'm very comfortable with improv and this documentary style filmmaking. So to me, this was a pleasure. It was really not a chore. I
think some of the other people that we've spoken to already from the Reboot Camp have said the same thing. I mean, the way that you allowed them to not be micromanaged, rather to basically, breathe in the moment. And if something felt like that's what your character would do, like to bring it to life.
For sure.
it's such a positive way, and it's a really funny film. That's the end result. Like I'm saying this genuinely from my perspective. I think it's hilarious.
Thank you, thank you.
Which is,
I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea. We've had comments and we've seen online like, oh, this is not funny. It's more a satire. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a satire. But yeah, I mean, really, my only direction, which was a hard direction to all the cast, was let's not make it shticky. Play it real. This is a documentary, and you're playing it real. Don't make it funny. Don't be funny. Be you within these circumstances, and bring not you, the character, obviously. And that took a little bit of just kind of staying on top. Other than that, it just gelled. I mean, everybody was such a pro. There was, which is why we also were able to shoot this so quickly, you know.
Well, I think that's the luxury. It's great to see Andrew, the last one to come into the chat. Andrew, if you've got any questions for Ivo, just let me know too. Andrew, one of the heads at Mogul, which is great to see him here. What was I suppose, the best day of shooting you had? Did anything stand out the most?
It's hard to say, you know, because truly the whole production was so much fun, and you know, it's hard to point out one day. What I truly did enjoy is once we moved out of our compound, which, by the way, is the old Frank Sinatra house from the 50s. And it was not remodeled since then. So it has this whole vintage, really funky decor, and it totally worked for us because, you know, it's kind of a weird self-help group. And so art direction was done, you know, 85%.
I think that was a dynamite location. And for anyone who's just kind of joined in the chat, what we're talking about is where the film was actually shot. And again, the location, as you mentioned, Frank Sinatra's house, Woodland Hills. I think that's where it is.
Yes.
I've been there once before. Yeah. And it does have that vibe where you could do like a self-help thing, or you could do a wedding, or you could do like, it's kind of got like an array of emotions that the property has.
And it sits on top of a hill, so it's isolated. So it's perfect for something slightly secretive. And then there's a variety of spaces to it. And we literally shot everything we could shoot. I mean, every single room, every single space that made sense, to give it variety, because a lot of these contained films have this claustrophobic feeling because you're shooting in two rooms, and after a while it becomes almost like a stage production. Which brings me to my answer of your previous question, which was the favorite day, which not a favorite day, but one that I really appreciated once we moved out and went to our ranch in Santa Clarita, where we shot kind of the bigger cult scenes. And, you know, like we all filmmakers have this, you know, like, I want it wide, you know?
Yeah, like grand.
Shooting from hills, and not a lot of it made it into the film, but some of it did. And so that was wonderful. It's always fun to shoot in you know, when you have these vistas.
Yeah. Well, I want to give you, for any of the filmmakers, Bella Janine, thanks for joining us. The chat's really filling up. Let's see if we can get to 400 guests in it. We're climbing north. Actually, I might circle back to this one, because this is just on when you were talking about as a filmmaker,
Sure.
with Hollywood itself at the moment. And obviously there's been a lot of changes, you know, the last 5 years. Partnering with Mogul, what was your first impression of NFTs and how the industry is starting to change?
You know, like everybody else, I had no clue what NFTs were up until recently, and I'm being brutally honest here. But I was very intrigued because, you know, our friend Rob Pryor, who was also in the movie, he did one of our painting therapy sessions. And he did an NFT with you guys very successfully. And
that was a lot of fun.
It was amazing. And so we were just totally intrigued by it, both Dave and I. And so we started talking and researching and doing. And so when we started talking with you guys, it was like, not only is it an NFT platform, but you guys get film. And that's I mean, it's a perfect marriage. You know, you can't go better than that. So it was awesome. It was super exciting. And like I said before, you know, to get to use some of this material that we have and share it with the world in this new, unique way is very, yeah, that's a personal thing for me, because it's like, otherwise it sits there, you know, and it's so wonderful. So
it's another asset that can bring to the film industry, which is, I think, a really positive thing. Nightly Crypto, Kelly, great to see you coming in the chat. More and more people coming in. It's fantastic. See if we can get to, like I said, 400 people watching. But you can ask Ivo any questions you like. I mentioned this to Dave with the auction coming up. And for people wondering if they just jumped in, what are we talking about with the NFT and the auctions? Mogul will be auctioning off NFTs from Reboot Camp. And as Ivo's mentioned, these are deleted scenes that are not actually part of the film. Do you have one that you think is going to get the most votes? Oh, the highest bid?
You're asking me?
Yeah. Do you have? I think David said that I think he said Nicole Aniston's is going to be the winner.
I think Nicole has a big chance just because it is such a funky element in the film, and it is organically connected to her as a talent, which makes it really fun. But you know, David Koechner, to me, you know, he is such a personality, and he is such a wonderful comedian. I think he's up there too, you know. And of course, everybody. I mean, it's so difficult to say. You know, Jarul, of course, has.
That's true. Yeah, Jarul's will be, but they're all great. I think, which is an exciting time to come in as well. Kelly, good to see you in the chat as well. Virginia, David, and Sandy just joined as well. Sorry, I'm not getting all you guys. Ask Ivo any question you like, Mogul NFTs or anything about Reboot Camp. Just on that, basically, the actually Hollywood changing. I mean, what's your advice for filmmakers going forward at the moment?
Well, that depends on their stage in their filmmaking career, right? If you're a beginning filmmaker, I say grab your phone and shoot films and don't worry about anything and figure it out. You know, learn as you go. I started on film. You know, we were lucky to get 16 millimeter film and shoot it. So this, you know, I have this conversation with my daughter, who has an iPhone, of course. And I'm like, you do not understand what you're holding in your hand, man. This is like amazing. And for everybody else who I am in the same boat with, who's not part of the studio system or really, you know, large scale productions like that, I think, you know, what you guys are doing with this crypto funding and kind of, I don't want to call it audience, but your you know, members or viewers participating in the process, I think there's a huge wave of democratization that can happen, which is, I believe, has a huge potential for the future. And then it comes down to, you know, distribution, and filmmakers need to also see films as a product, because it's, you know, it's an old cliche, but it's show business. And so you have to make films that you can gain traction for and find both artistic and commercial, because that's the only way to keep going and doing it. And so this kind of platform, or on a much smaller scale, you know, DIY distribution, there's wonderful opportunities for that. If you manage to make films on a really affordable budget, which nowadays you can, you know, that's, especially for beginning filmmakers, I think it's great opportunities.
And what would you say?
Yeah, sorry.
Is that your dog in the background?
That is my dog. Yes, yes.
Ah, beautiful. That's two dogs we've had on the Mogul Live recently. What about for the actor? I love to ask this this question for any of the actors that are in the community that watch or listen to this later on. When they audition for you, what do you like to see in that casting?
I'm a big believer in less is more. You know, to me, showing your genuine self is so much more important than trying to nail something. I do not like the casting process. I've done it thousands of times. And you know, it's not fun for me because it's such an unnatural function of the process of filmmaking. And so knowing that, to me, that I know there's a high level of discomfort. And so being able to be in the moment as that happens is very difficult. And on the other side, some people are amazing in auditions, and I've had that happen too. You know, you're like blown away, and then they really don't bring that level once they're on set. So to me, it's really more important to connect with the actors on a personal level and meet and just talk and just chat and see what they're thinking and what their attitude was, and that's what kind of what we did with the Reboot Camp process. It was very personal.
And I'm gonna kind of challenge you on that one as well, because there's a lot more now self tapes coming in after COVID.
Yes.
How would you advise an actor to kind of show their true self on a self tape? Was there anything that you think they could be doing?
Well, self tapes are great, and we did get a bunch of those for specific things, because we wanted to see, for example, for very specific scenes, if that feeling is right there. So we did do that. And as a matter of fact, because of a self tape, we completely upgraded one of our actors, Daniel, who was supposed to be just a cameo, and he did such a lovely job, and we met him and everything, that he was upgraded to the Jimmy role. So, you know, acting, besides being a passion pursuit, to me is a craft, just like filmmaking. You know, there's of course the artistic level to it, which needs to be there, but the skill set and the craft is what people need to work on. I mean, that, you know, is so important, because, you know, the motivation needs to be to become the really best actor you can be, versus I want to be famous or I want to make a lot of money doing that.
Which is a great kind of topic to talk about, and anyone wants to join in with their thoughts or their opinions as well. But the idea being, you know, some people are in Hollywood, and a couple of our previous guests mentioned this, but some people are there just for the vanity, just for the red carpet, just for the fame. And they get a job, and it's, you know, it's more about Instagram. It's more about, you know, I have something to talk about. And then there's the other actors that are, hey, I really want to be the character, and I live and breathe this. This is my bread and butter.
Yes.
And it's very easy to spot that once you're working with them. But sometimes, you know, from an initial appointment or initial meeting or an initial casting, it takes a little bit to figure out who they really are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, you know, social media and all of that posting, it's part of the environment we live and work in. And so you can't completely discard it, because there's a value to it in, you know, in a variety of ways. But if it's only about that, then it becomes a challenge. And it's
exactly.
And you know, this is the old saying, you know, the camera doesn't lie. You do capture truthful moments, or you capture this kind of fakery, and that's kind of the litmus test. It's you know.
Yeah. Well, I think we've got time for maybe two more questions. Cinema MX has joined. Canby Corridor, great to see you in. Ruby, Mick DMH, Andre, all these guys coming in. We've got probably two more questions. We've got about 5 more minutes with Ivo, so you can jump in anytime. Great sound bites, by the way, Ivo. This has been a great conversation.
No, it's been fun. This is fun.
Yeah,
listen, and also, to me, talking about film is never a chore. So,
well, I did mention very briefly your first feature film, which you wrote and directed, which is actually more a horror thriller. And then segueing to Reboot Camp. Can you talk about your motivation writing this first one and then segueing into sort of a comedy?
You know, I started in commercials and actually still photography, like art direction for that. And I always wanted to do film. And so Jarring was the second screenplay I ever wrote, not rewritten 17 times, but maybe twice. And it was, you know, okay. But it was a wonderful experience, and you know, they tell you have to find your own voice. Horror film's not really my voice, and I discovered that making this film. Now, it's not an awful film. It's okay. It got distribution. It got into some festivals. You know, that's fine. But what really I think is important, and if you look at really the most successful filmmakers, they all make the same film over and over and over again in some way, right? Because this is their organic story, and this is their organic way of.
This is their water level. This is where they kind of like feel most at home.
Yeah, and this is also that's part of their gut. You know, this is beyond thinking. This is real, and so it's really important to discover that. And for me, this satirical, you know, kind of skewering society is that's it. And so I think that also, and you know, between Jarring and this, it took me about 12 screenplays to discover that. And I refused to make another film where I was not 100% convinced this is my thing, which is why there was this big gap. Now, I did a bunch of shorts, just kind of like play with different genres and tons of music videos, commercials, all of that. But for a feature, I said, no, the next one I'm doing is the one in my kind of this organic space. And I feel Reboot Camp is that.
Yeah, well, it's very funny, and for anyone just kind of jumping in the chat and wondering what we're talking about, jarring horror thriller, Reboot Camp, I would say very funny, satire, shot like the mockumentary or shot that first camera style, and a great film which Mogul's excited to partner with. My very last question, Ivo, is what are you most excited about coming up? You know, whether it be with Mogul, with the NFT launches, with the possibility of Reboot Camp, the sequel. What's got you on fire?
The NFTs, I'm super crazy excited, and just because it's such a new space, I am curious too. So I'm totally excited. I'm excited to finally get back to LA after COVID. I haven't been back for our event, you know, and to see everybody and hang out and have fun, and that's going to be a thrill. So that's really short term. And then, you know, after that, I'm really excited if we can pull together and do the sequel because, you know, this film has momentum and it won some awards. It's getting some recognition, distribution, all that. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, well, I think the world needs some more laughter at the moment. So
yeah,
I would second that.
Yeah.
I did say one more. Kelly's come in right on the last minute. Kelly's just got a question for you, which is any tips for shooting my first short on an iPhone? Any tips for shooting my first short on an iPhone?
There's a couple of really good apps. Filmic Pro is an amazing app. It costs a little bit, but it gives you, you know, great controls on an iPhone. So you can override all the automatic changes in, you know, iris and all that. And then a few lenses, depending on which iPhone you have. I think Moondog Labs is one that makes really great lenses. A really good film, Tangerine, was shot on an iPhone 5 using some of those. Steven Soderbergh shot a film on an iPhone. And it's a crazy powerful camera, 4K camera that, you know, and it's so maneuverable. It's so small that you can get away and steal shots, and you know, don't limit yourself to your own house. Like, go out and get some amazing, you know, crazy locations that you would not be able to do even with a camcorder, you know.
That's a great point. Again, you know, Santa Monica Pier with an iPhone is very achievable, but you know,
nobody's going to call you out.
Yeah.
Or ask for a permit, you know?
Yeah. That's a great Nightly Cryptos quickly come in. Why did you choose to work with Mogul, and how has the process of working with them been? Okay.
How? Because, you know, we evaluated a few potential partners, and this just felt like a really great connection and you know, synergy. So that was an easy decision there, and it's been really fantastic to work with all of you guys. Everybody's on top of their stuff, and we're just, working on both ends in delivering whatever we can and prepping and promoting. And so it's been a fantastic experience.
Yeah, it's going to be great on the 16th. And like I said, there's more events and some really exciting stuff, mogulproductions.com. Ivo, what a pleasure. I would love to talk
Thank
to
you
you
for
again.
having me.
And also, congratulations. I really, I think anyone who hasn't seen Reboot Camp, go out there. It's very, very funny. And it's also a great film just to kind of like admire, just obviously taking a little bit of the funny side of life. So we'd love to get you back. Take care, guys.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to our next guest. Chaz Bono, Nicole Aniston are coming up with Mogul Live. Have a great weekend.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again, Ivo. Bye now.
Bye.